Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your guest co-host, John Stargaryan. Today, we're going to talk about UFC Vegas 102, Jared Cannonier versus Robocop. And my friends, it's going down this Saturday night live at the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. You got the former title challenger and perennial top 5 contender, Jared Cannonier, and John Stargaryan, one of the only men to get knockouts in 3 separate weight classes, Jared Cannonier, taking on the emerging Gregory Rodrigues, Robocop, a man who's paid his dues on his regional scene in his UFC, and in his 10th UFC appearance, gets the long-awaited first ever main event against the very established Jared Cannonier. Welcome to Half the Battle, John.
Thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it. Been watching the show for years. Pumped to actually be on here.
Oh, man, the pleasure's all mine. So without further ado, my friends, let's get right down to business, because in that main event, we got Robocop, Gregory Rodrigues. He's 16-5, taking on Jared Cannonier, who is 17-8 currently. They got it. Robocop minus 220. The comeback on Jared Cannonier is plus 185. You know what's interesting, John? The last 3 weeks has been a passing of the torch in the middleweight division, right? We start off with a very depressing night when Nasruddin starches the beloved Izzy Adesanya. Not sad for those that bet Nasruddin, and props to you that did. But, man, for us hardcore fans that didn't have action on that fight, or that maybe bet Izzy, I know that was devastating. Then the following week, was it were we already at Drickus, or was there? Oh, yeah, we were at Drickus and Sean. The following week, we were at Drickus and Sean. And that wasn't really a torch passing because the champ was already the champ, but the difference in how competitive that fight was compared to their first was night and day. And now this week we get this main event between Robocop, who's trying to move into the top 10, against Cannonier. And what's interesting, how I'm mentioning how the last 3 weeks have been almost a passing of the torch. You know, the Israel Adesanyas, the Sean Stricklands, the Jared Cannoniers, these guys are going to be ushered out the middleweight rankings by, obviously, Drickus is the champ now, but now you got the guys like Imavov, you got the guys like Caio Borralho, you got the boogeyman of the division, Khamzat Chimaev. So all these guys are going to come in and replace that old guard. And what's so wild to me is how quickly the sport evolves. It was just yesterday that Izzy and Sean Strickland were on top of the middleweight division. It was even before that Alex Poatan was a middleweight champion. And, you know, this is the same division that the great Anderson Silva broke many records in. So it's really incredible to see the evolution of the sport. And, you know, John, I follow that MMA History Today page on Twitter. I'm pretty sure they posted about, Izzy's UFC debut against Rob Wilkinson, who went on to become the PFL champ, right? Dude, we're approaching 7 years. And I was just thinking about it, like, so is that the shelf life, right, for the average fighter / middleweight? Because now all these guys are being ushered out. And it's not just middleweight, it's every division. But these last 3 weeks, we've been talking middleweight.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, too, because you say 7 years. And I mean, it is a long time, but it also, Izzy was such an active champion and he held the title for so long. It literally felt like he held it for a decade. And now the belt's just flip-flop back and forth for about 2 years till Drickus got it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And to your credit, like, it wasn't just that he was an active champ. This is a guy who had 80 kickboxing fights that we know of, John, that we know of, right? You know, and so, man, the sport is brutal. But now we got to break down this matchup because the same thing has happened. They've done the same matchup for Cannonier last 3 fights in a row, right? Starts off with Imavov. Is Imavov a top 5 guy or not? Yes, he is. Is Caio Borralho a top 5 guy or not? Yes, he is. Well, now Jared's not holding up a top 5 spot. Now it's a top 10 spot because, you know, Imavov and Caio kind of ushered him out the top 5. So now the question is Robocop a top 10 guy? And that's what we're about to find out Saturday night. Because look, Jared, here's what I got to say about, you know, regarding his decline, because that's the big talk, right? The guy's 41 years old. He's had a long career. So in terms of mentally, I don't think he's declined mentally at all. Like, if you watch those last 2 fights, like, he's still trying, man. He's still going for it. And at points in both those fights, they were looking like evenly matched fights until, you know, certain things happen, right? But here's where I do think he's kind of declining a little bit, John. Physically, because you look at Jared Cannonier, it looks like the scariest dude you've ever seen. I am noticing a little bit less abs now. And the other thing, the more important thing, is the reactions are a little bit slower. He's not seeing the punches coming as well. And that's what I'm worried about, because look, the heart's still there. The will to win's still there. He's still going to go out there and throw bombs. And we know Robocop has been chinned before, so it could happen again. But man, Jared's been chinned his last 2 fights badly. Like, people will only bring up how the Imavov fight was this quote unquote early stoppage, but they'll refuse to mention that the Khaos fight, I want to call it a late stoppage, but it was never stopped. Like, dude, that was a knockout. Like, what the hell? Like, and Khaos ain't known for no heavy hands. So I don't know. I'm not liking the receiving looks from Jared lately.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. And it's funny because you brought up some of those sketchy moments, but there's one even sketchier than those. If you go back a couple fights, right? I think it was the fight before Imavov. People remember him fighting Marvin Vettori as his best performance in the UFC. And to a large degree, that's true. But he got hurt bad in the first round by Marvin Vettori. And has Marvin Vettori hurt anyone? He didn't hurt Andrew Sanchez on the feet. And
no, Marvin Vettori is not known for hurting anyone.
Yeah. He was like, I remember looking, he was like plus 1,200 to win by KO. So he got hurt that fight. Obviously, Imavov hurt him. Okay. But like the Khaos one, to your point, that fight should have been stopped. And that was about as ugly a closing sequence as I could remember. You know, his face, I mean, he competed in that fight, but by the end of the 5th round, his face looked like Khalil Roundtree's did after 3 rounds of Poetan, you know?
Yeah. Man, I just felt bad. Like, I know I'm repeating myself that it wasn't stopped. Like why let a 41-year-old take that unnecessary extra damage? Like, I get it, let him be a warrior, but come on, man, that was a stoppage. Now, as far as Robocop's concerned, so it's not like they're just giving some random 5-0 guy a fight against Jared Cannonier. And, you know, if that were the case, I think Jared Cannonier would kill this guy. But, you know, you're dealing with a guy in Robocop who's already 7-2 in the UFC. So this is going to be his 10th UFC fight. And for his 10th UFC fight, he's getting his first main event. He's getting his first former title challenger. And it's cool to see, man, because this is a guy that has paid his dues, right? And he could arguably be 8-1 in the UFC, man. I thought a lot of people thought he may have beat Armen Petrosian, you know?
I thought so.
Yeah, so there's that. And then the stoppage losses that he's had, whether it was the Hulk Ferreira fight, whether it was the Jordan Williams fight. The one that's not bad is actually the Bruno Lopez one from back in the day at like 205 pounds. That dude's like beating undefeated Russians now in the UFC, right? But yeah, the thing about Robocop though, yeah, maybe you could say his chin, maybe you can say he's slow. I look at it like this, okay? When you've had 21 pro fights and you're a kill or be killed fighter, you will be killed from time to time. That is just the bottom line, man. So to be knocked out 3 times with that style in 21 pro fights is not a red flag to me. And then with Jared, the last 2 fights, him getting hurt like that's not a red flag. These guys are studs, but what does suck is he's aging. His durability is declining. He's slowing down, and Gregory's catching him at a great time. The thing that sucks is these odds, man. These odds, oh man, give me a minus 175, and I think I might be in. Like I know historically, Jared's reached bigger heights at this point, but guys, like we talked about with Nasruddin last week, or any of these other passing of the torch type fights. Like, every champion was once a contender. Every contender was once a prospect. Every prospect was once a regional fighter. So it's about, can he rise to the occasion? The odds indicate he will. I think he will. I think that the size difference is going to be a big factor. And Gregory Robocop is so comfortable trading in the pocket. And I think he's going to have something waiting for Jared Cannonier, whether it's a left hook, an uppercut, an overhand. If he wants to mix in takedowns. So you remember that Jack Hermanson fight when Jack tried to take down Jared, and he did take him down. It took his back, but like Jack gassed out as a result because Jared made him work so damn hard, right? Gregory's on a different level as far as his jiu-jitsu is concerned. And I know historically Jared's been hard to, hold down or submit. Like, Glover's been in there with him. But dude, let me ask you something. What fucking year was that fight? I'm gonna pull it up right now. That shit was in goddamn 2017, John. You understand? Like, so yeah, man, I think Robocop's catching him at a great time. And actually, I think he comes out here and knocks out Jared Cannonier for the 3rd fight in a row Don't give me no Kyle was a decision bullshit. And Robocop is a way heavier hitter than Kyle Bohio. Kyle Bohio was like on first gear the entire fight. Like Kyle Bohio has that kind of plate safe Machida style on the feet and a bit of Damian Maia on the ground. I felt like he was in first gear. Jared was giving max effort. It still wasn't enough. But now you're going to get a guy in Robocop who is not going to be in first gear, who does have that one hitter quitter. I think Jared's hitting the deck.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get the perspective, and I kind of agree with it. It's funny, when the line got announced, I was kind of like, oh, Jared as a dog against a guy like Robocop who's been chinned a bunch of times. Like, how do you not take that? But something I noticed, like just in myself over the last 3 or 4 years, I've gotten consistently killed in these kind of like changing of the guard spots, where it's like, that's why I passed on Izzy Adesanya a couple weeks ago, where I'm trying to, buy low on these top tier fighters, but it's like the UFC knows what they're doing. They know Jared's going, and Jared's like, hey, give me a paycheck. I'm willing to go fight. I mean, I'm sure he, in his mind, to your point, thinks that he's actually still a title contender, but like everybody else knows he's not. And honestly, even taking it a bit further back with Jared, he performed admirably against Izzy in his loss. He beat Sean Strickland. Obviously, he looked good against Vettori, but we don't know if he was declining then too, because Strickland and Vettori are quite friendly matchups for him, in that neither of them hits particularly hard.
So real quick, so I'm so sorry to cut you off.
No worries.
But this is back to the main point, right? The Stricklands, the Izzies, the Vettoris, the Brunsons, the Cannonier, like all these dudes are on their way out, getting replaced by these new guys.
By killers. And the truth is, Imavov and Kaio and Robocop all hit considerably harder than any of those guys. Jared, even in Jared's heyday at his peak, he was not the most durable fighter in the world. I do think, like, if you tell me this goes 25 minutes, I think Jared probably competes with him over 25 minutes. He was competitive. He won 2 rounds against Imavov. He was competitive for spats against Kaio. I think he could compete here. I think he could even knock Robocop out. But the truth is, at this point, it's quite clear to me that Robocop's the much faster fighter. I mean, you go and look at the way he just took apart Brad Tavares. And I know Brad Tavares is another one who's not what he once was. But, I mean, no one has kind of just obliterated him the way Gregory did. I think he's finally starting to get the market respect he deserves. Like, him being an underdog to Christian Leroy Duncan last fight was insulting. And then the bigger thing, even almost, you mentioned the grappling, and I actually, my initial assessment of this, and it's still sort of my assessment, is that it's very hard to grapple Jared. Like, obviously David Branch, world champion jiu-jitsu player, got him down 3 times, couldn't really do much with it. No one really has. But to your point, this was all against a much more athletic, much physically stronger Jared Cannonier. Yeah, Imavov didn't do much with his takedowns, but Imavov's not the grappler that Robocop is. So it's like, could he have big success? It's possible he could. Because I think a lot of what made it so hard to hold Jared down is just how strong and how explosive he is. And that's obviously starting to go at an alarming rate. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you. I should have just bet it blind because I saw the number going up, but I was in my head, I'm like, I really want to bet Jared here. And then, I looked at the fight, and I tend to agree with you. I think, Rodriguez in the minus 220, minus 230 range is fine. He might get clipped. Maybe he doesn't put Jared down and it's a competitive decision. But I think he's got all the upside in this matchup just about everywhere. And obviously, from an athleticism standpoint, he's on the ascent and Jared is clearly declining.
Yeah, and the thing I've been liking about Robocop is that he's been fighting tough guys. Like, again, it's not like, one of these 5-0 guys, never been tested. He had 1 contender series fight. Oh, he lands 11 strikes per minute off a 1-fight sample size. Let's go run with that. No, we're dealing with a guy who beat the Iron Turtle, beat Brad Tavares, like beat an up-and-coming prospect like CLD. Hey, now's your chance to really move up. You're 32, 33. It's now or never, kid. So I think this is his time. And I like that the approach in the fights is well-rounded. I like the fact that, like, he doesn't have to take him down and submit him, but he can take him down, land a couple shots, Jared gets back up, and they're back at the feet. And it's not like one of these cases where it's like when Damian Maia tries to take you down 1,000,000 times, you stuff him, then you get back up. Now he's pulling guard. Now he's gassed. Now it's over. Whereas Robocop's just going to get right back to work on the feet. Like, he's well-rounded. He can put on the whole entire MMA game together. Whereas with Jared, I'm just worried about Jared clipping him. I'm not worried about Jared taking him down. I'm not worried about Jared humping legs. I'm not worried about none of that. I'm just worried about shutting this thing off. That's it.
and Jared also, a lot of his game relies on leg kicks, and Robocop's one of the few guys in the upper weight classes who actually checks leg kicks with consistency. So yeah, it's just, can he deal with Jared's boxing? I think he probably can.
Yeah, and speaking of leg kicks, Jared's been taking some hard ones lately. But bro, we can keep talking about this main event forever. We got to move on. So let's get down to it. So co-main event of the evening in the featherweight division, we got Calvin, the Boston finisher, Kattar. He's 23-8, taking on Yousef, the Moroccan devil Zalal, who's 16-5-1. Currently, here's where things get interesting. Yousef Zalal minus 425. The comeback on Calvin Kattar's plus 325. John, if you would have told me these odds a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I mean, I think that I might have laid my entire bankroll on Calvin Kattar. When Calvin Kattar first came into the UFC, he was already super experienced on his regionals, right? And he makes his debut against Feely, which is like that's a seasoned vet right there. Feely was like minus 300. I remember I was on the show saying, do not parlay Feely in this spot. This kid is dangerous. And man, Calvin at his best, that jab, that straight through right hand, the takedown defense in his prime, not lately, in his prime. And just the Boston durability and toughness. This guy's durability. Oh my God, that Max Holloway fight, that Josh Emmett fight. Like, people only remember the Holloway fight, which they should, but the Emmett fight, like, you don't just eat over 100 knockout blows by Emmett on the chin and just stand there. But he just stood there that night, but the subsequent performances reflected the damage he took. And I just don't see the same Calvin Kattar anymore. I'm sure he still has it upstairs that he wants to be there. He's a tough guy. Of course he is. If you're not going to go down in that Max Holloway fight, you're not going to not answer the bell between rounds and stuff. Like, hey, you're a certified dog. Okay. But now it's at the point where, and injuries too. We forgot about that. Injuries are a huge thing, man. I've been talking about this ad nauseum. When these fighters have injuries, it's like, I'll keep bringing this example up ad nauseum. Like, you saw Jimmy Crute last week, how he looked pretty fucking good, right? And I know because Jimmy Crute fought, you watched his fight with Jamal Hill, and you saw how Jamal looked in that fight. But then a week or two ago, you saw Jamal versus Yuri with 2 knee braces. Like, what? Like, that's not even the same guy. And that's not to discredit Yuri at all. I'm just saying, like, injuries are a real thing. Did that move like the Hill that fought Crute? No. And then here, do I expect Kattar to move like the guy that fought Lamas, the guy that fought Feely, the guy that fought Burgos? Absolutely not, man. If you go back to that Arnold Allen fight, because people only remember the injury, but like, so I bet on Allen in that fight, and dude, like, literally the whole fight, like up until the injury, I was like smiling. This was like the smoothest sailing ever. Like, Arnold Allen's out there looking like Muhammad Ali, like fucking popping his head back 4 times in a row with jabs, and it was like the smoothest of sailing. And then the unfortunate injury happened, but like, people are trying to act like had he not got injured, he would have won. Yeah, okay, bro. Arnold Allen was easily outclassing him. This is after the Emmett fight, right? And he gets injured in the Allen fight. Comes back against Sterling, and I know Sterling is a tough out, but like, give me this much effort, it was so bad. So yeah, it's unfortunate because I'm a huge fan of Kattar, but he's a shell of himself. And with Zalal, man, to get cut from the UFC after your first stint, go back to the regional scene, get some finishes, come back. Now you're on a 3-fight kill streak. You've earned this opportunity. And I think what people forget, John, is that Zalal was like 24 when he was in the UFC the first time, 22, 23, 24. He's fighting guys like Topuria. Sean Woodson's like 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. Like, these guys are matchup problems, man. And he took a round off Topuria. So here's my thing. There's one path to victory for Kattar in this fight. I know you know exactly what it is. If Zalal wants to trade hands in the pocket with Kattar, I mean, I'll be very happy to see Kattar get back on track, but that's not what Zalal does. Zalal's going to run around the ring, calf kicks, get Kattar frustrated, mix in these level changes, grind him out. Maybe at this point, get another submission. I mean, because Kattar's at that point now where things that didn't happen in the past are going to start happening now. So yeah, I actually agree with these odds. I think Kattar, I love the guy, but it's over. And give me Zalal to continue that big win streak.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. It's funny looking at Yousef Zalal and the point you brought up, because when his first run in the UFC, I was like, yeah, he's good. I mean, he's okay, but he's weak. He's not athletic, or he's not that athletic. But now it's like, yeah, he's kind of turned into a man now. He's like sitting down on his shots. He's rocking people. His grappling has gotten a lot better. I like Zalal. You know, he's a good fighter. He's hard to hit. He's got good footwork. And Calvin Kattar, even at his absolute apex, was kind of a guy who struggled with good footwork. I'm sure you remember the Renato Moicano fight, you know, where Moicano just kind of sat on the outside and just kicked him for 15 straight minutes. And yeah, I mean, everything you said is accurate about it. Like, you go back since the Holloway fight, like, I'm trying to think in my head of a good performance since then. Like, he beat Giga, but Giga was also gassed out 7 minutes into the fight, and honestly still landed a ton on him over the last, 4 rounds of that fight.
Giga gassed after one takedown. That was it.
Yeah, literally. And it was kind of ugly. Like, I thought it was a pretty, I bet Kattar in that fight, and I thought it was a pretty ugly performance by him, but he was fortunate that he had like a death gassed opponent in front of him for 20 minutes, but he still couldn't finish him. And then to your point, the Allen fight, I tried to double down on it there with Kattar, and yeah, he looked horrendous before the injury happened. Like, Allen was making him miss with zero problem, just moving around him and touching him at will. The injury happens, the Sterling fight happened. I didn't bet Aljo because I was like, Kattar's really explosive. He's got good takedown defense. And then he just gets mugged for 15 minutes. Landed 8 significant strikes across 15 minutes in that fight. Now, like, Aljo's a former champion. Obviously, he just gave a good fight to Movsar Evloev. But you just watch the way he used to defend takedowns, the way he used to move, and it's just different. The guy's, he's had injuries. He's taken a ton of damage. He's older. I'm with you. Like, I think he could knock out Zalal. If Zalal decides to bite down with him, Calvin Kattar can still take a shot and he can still give a shot. If he decides to do that, then yeah, I mean, Kattar's got a good chance to win this fight. But Zalal never does that. He's going to jab on the outside. He's going to kick him and then mix in takedowns in all likelihood. And I think that's going to be enough. To your point, I guess Zalal could sub him. I still feel like, if Aljamain Sterling just had 12 minutes on top of this guy and couldn't sub him, I'm pretty skeptical how likely Zalal is to. I kind of think the fight's going to go the distance, but I'm with you. It's almost like the main event. We've seen Father Time come for Calvin Kattar, and it's been years since we've seen an elite version of Calvin Kattar, like 3 or 4 years. There's really no reason to think
more.
Like since COVID, Holloway fight was in 2021, I think. Yeah, you're right. So like 5 years.
The last time that this guy truly looked like himself was in 2009 versus Ricardo Lamas, because because people forget context, and this is why tape is important. Because like, for example, I didn't go back and rewatch the Arnold fight, so I also was like, yeah, he might have a chance against Aljo, but had I actually gone back and rewatched it, I'd be like, oh wow, he is done. But bro, let me say this, John. I've noticed a decline in him since the Jeremy Stevens fight, which was in 2020. Like, go pull up that fight, because the only thing people remember is the big elbow, which was an incredible elbow. But watch what happened before that. Jeremy Stevens was lighting Calvin Kattar up. That Dan Ige fight, the next one, wasn't the prettiest look either. Then it was the Max Holloway absorb, the significant strike record in UFC history. Then the Giga fight happened, and then it's absorb Josh Emmett knockout blows for 5 rounds straight. And then the next two have just been the ghost of Kattar. So it's unfortunate. I love the guy, but Father Time, it is what it is. Yousef, just don't bang in the pocket. Don't throw hands with this guy, and you win. So, yeah, I think he will cover his price tag, actually.
Yeah, I kind of agree. He's given us a lot of great memories, but it's time for the new guard.
Yeah, just like middleweight, that's what's happening here, too, at featherweight. Because, like, bro, you cannot be we're going to talk about it with some of these other fights, next week with Henry. My boy Henry's 38 at bantamweight. You know what I'm saying, bro? He retired in 2020. Now he's coming back for another run. Yeah. Oh, okay, Henry. So yeah, man. Now, were you about to say something? Sorry.
No. I'm with you. I think Zalal's going to handle him pretty easily, honestly.
Yeah. Now, featured bout in the middleweight division, we got Edmen Shabazyan. He's 13-5, taking on Dylan Budka, who's 7-4. Currently, they got it. Edmen Shabazyan minus 365. The comeback on Budka is plus 300. Now, historically speaking, John, this is the fight that Edmen Shabazyan walks through the opponent. Like, if you're not a threat to the top 15, Edmen's probably gonna not just beat you, but run through you. However, every single time Edmen's got past the first round, shit has gotten sketchy. Maybe not in the Dalcha fight, but I'm saying anytime he's gotten past the first. I was about to say with a real guy. What about cough Darren Stewart cough? You know what I'm saying? Do you remember the sweat Darren Stewart not only gave us in that fight, but in the Kevin Holland fight too in round 3?
He used to have the dog in him. He used to.
It's wild. So what do you think? Because Budka, okay, here's the thing. People think, well, hey, survived the first round, right? But here's my issue with that, John. So yeah, Budka might have a cardio edge. Budka might have the grinder's edge, this and that. Okay, great. But you have to inflict damage, right? These guys, you know, Gerald Mearshart, most submissions in middleweight history. We're talking about more than Damian Maia, more than Royce Gracie, more than Anderson Silva. Okay. Fluffy Hernandez, most weaponized cardio in the history of the middleweight division, right? Who are the other guys finishing him? Derek Brunson. How many knockouts does Derek Brunson have on his record? A lot. And then now here we are with Budka, who is scared to throw a punch. So, like, even if this gets past the first, I think Shabazyan might be fine. I'm curious about your take. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I taped it when it was like minus 255, and it was like 11:30 at night. I was sitting in bed, and I was like, I might have to play Edmen, but I went to sleep. I woke up, and it was minus 320, and I was like, well, that made the decision very easy, and I'm happy about it. But I'm with you 100% here. Dude, Dylan Budka is not UFC level. People forget about it, but this guy fought Wes Schultz, who fought on Contender Series last year regionally, and was firmly losing that fight until Schultz gassed out of that fight. To your point, he throws no volume. He fights Cesar Almeida. Almeida's a dangerous striker, but we've seen now, based on the guys who've taken him down since, guys like Roman Kopylov and Ihor Potieria, the guy can't defend wrestling at all, and Dylan Budka wasn't able to wrestle him. He's got no striking. He is got top time for 15 minutes by Gasbag and Andre Petroski. And now he's fighting Edmen, and like Edmen should be fine everywhere here. Like, would I be sick to my stomach if I laid minus 365 on Edmen Shabazyan and he collapsed like he did against GM3? Yes, which is why I'm not doing it. But I'm with you. In my head, I'm like, what is the case? If he gets tired, he might just be able to take Budka down and lay on him. I'm not sure he can't just do that. He's the better wrestler, in my opinion, anyway. So yeah, I really think he's just a much better fighter of Budka at everything. I think he should run through him. Having said that, the GM3 fight, man, that was sketchy even for Edmen. You know, he was having a nice, comfortable pace.
That's what GM3 does. That's what GM3 does.
It is what Gerald does, but I don't. But look, I'm with you. I don't think it's. I mean, look, this is Dana White saying we really don't want to cut you. You're still pretty young. Beat Dylan Budka, and we'll keep you on for another 3 fights. If you can't, then you're leaving me no choice. That's what this is. It is a layup for him to get right here. And if he can't get right, then he shouldn't be here, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I hope he does it in an emphatic fashion. No disrespect to Budka at all, but like it'd just be cool to see this guy that has been in the UFC since he was literally a kid. Now he's growing into a man, has still had a lot of setbacks, but granted, it's a great competition. You know, all ranked. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dan. I was gonna say it's like Edmen, they keep trying to force him into these like high-level fights against guys who are just better than him. You know, he's never really had here's 5 to 10 fights against the middle of the division. You know, instead it's like he got 5 to 10 fights against really good fighters. He kind of fumbled the bag against GM3, but now they're giving him like the worst fighter on the roster. Like, just build him normally. Let him go fight regular people, you know?
Yeah. No, it's interesting how it works. But yeah, let's see, man. Because again, like, the thing about it is, okay, the whole get past the first round, but there's no like threat coming back at that right? Like, is now Dylan going to start winging? If he is, then I think that actually might leave Edmen openings to finish Dylan even easier. So Dylan's got to be a magnet to the crotch, but like, he's not fluffy. He doesn't have the submission ability of GM3, you know, So Jack Hermanson was another one. Like, I just think these guys are on a completely different level than Budka, but Budka's plus 300 and Edmen's quit multiple times throughout the year. So if you're feeling frisky, I get it. You know, Budka had a good performance against that Russian that killed Zach Reese last week, but it was a different dynamic completely. How that fight went compared to how this fight's going to go, you know?
Yeah, they were just chucking hammers. I mean, that whole fight.
Next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Ismael Bonfim, he's 20-4, taking on Nazim Sadykhov, who's 9-1-1. Currently, they got it Ismael Bonfim -200. The comeback on Sadykhov is +170. Hey, man, two studs in the lightweight division trying to make a name for themselves. These guys want to enter the top 20, the top 15, the top 10. But before they do that, they have to have their prospect showdown. And who do you think's got the edge here?
I played Bonfim earlier in the week. I think the current price is about right. I really rate Ismael Bonfim a fair amount as a striker. I think his grappling is potentially suspect against really good grapplers. I'm not sure he's facing that here in Nazim Sadykhov, but he's very, very fast. He has great head strike defense. You know, he's outlanded. He's landed 20% more efficiently at distance than his opponents have thus far in his career. Hits the body, hits the legs, can fight out of both stances. I just rate everything about what he does as a striker. And on the other side, you have Sadykhov, who, look, he's a great athlete. He's dangerous, no question about that. But I look at Nazim Sadykhov's, career thus far, and, he's not a proactive grappler. And when he is, he hasn't really controlled many good fighters. He won his Contender Series fight emphatically, but he couldn't outland Hassanzada at distance. And I mean, everybody's going to see Hassanzada soon in the UFC, and he is not that great, I promise.
Who's he fighting off the top of your head? Do you remember?
I don't know if he's booked for a fight, but he did get a contract on Contenders last year.
Yeah. No, I was literally just looking into that kid. Keep going.
Yeah,
I'm gonna pull it up. Let's see.
He's an interesting fighter. Right. He fought Evan Elder, and he won that fight, but Elder was up 2 rounds on every card, outlanded him pretty firmly, but Elder got a horrible cut, and the fight got stopped from a cut stoppage. Obviously he went to a draw with Slava Borshev, but I mean, that fight, Slava beat the brakes off him for 12 out of 15 minutes of that fight. He was fortunate to get a 10-8 round in round 2, but, it was the same thing we've seen in every other fight. He takes more, his opponents attempt more strikes than he does. His basic only path of playing defense is doing a high shell. He'll let you hit his body for free if you want. Doesn't cut the cage particularly well, and doesn't throw in combination. Like, I respect his physicality. He's very dangerous. He's going to win a lot of fights off that alone, just being his athleticism being very dangerous. But I'm looking at one guy in Bonfim who lands 20% more efficiently than his opponents, and a guy in Sadykhov whose opponents land 15% more efficiently than him. A guy in Bonfim who outlands his opponents at distance by 2.5 strikes a minute, against the guy in Sadykhov who gets outlanded by about 3 strikes a minute by his opponents. One of them eats head shots for lunch consistently. The other one almost never gets touched to the head. I just look at the dynamic, and I'm like, yeah, Nazim, his body kicks out of southpaw could potentially cause Bonfim some issues here. But I expect in the aggregate, Bonfim is going to land a lot more strikes than him. Obviously, I think both are capable of hurting each other, but I think Bonfim, I'd favor a bit more to hurt him, just since he defends head strikes well and Nazim does not. So I think Ismael is just a much more technically sound fighter than Nazim is. And I don't think he's a much worse athlete. So I like Ismael a fair amount here.
Yeah. My thing with Sadykhov is he fucks around too much, right? Like in that bar show fight, bro, when he hits him with that head kick, he dives into that guard with that elbow. Like your finish is right there. Right. And then you get your 10-8 round. This guy's on death's doorstep. Go ahead and seal the deal, or get a nice little takedown here, lay on top of him and then you hear Joe Rogan being like, Nazim's getting cocky. Nazim's just standing there eating shots, and I don't think that it's because his defense is bad. I think it's because he's arrogant. I think it's because he feels like, hit me with your best shot. Now I'm going to hit you with mine. And that style at the UFC, 4-ounce gloves, those margins are so thin, man. And the thing with Bonfim regarding his striking, so a lot of people say he's a very clean striker. Here's my take. So I think he's a very accurate striker. Yeah. I think he's a very defensively sound striker. I mean, what, 71% takedown? 71% striking defense. Is that what the number? You know what I mean? Like that's pretty fucking serious, Yeah. And we're not talking about a guy who lays on people. That's why he doesn't get hit. No, we're talking about a guy that bangs for 3 straight rounds and has 71% striking defense. So that's something to be reckoned with. But regarding people calling him a clean striker, so I think, like I said, I think he's precise. He's good at, he can mix it to the body. He can go upstairs. He can, mix in his jab, but he does wing a lot. He wings huge. So people calling him clean, I think he's accurate. I don't know about clean, but I do like his style, and I do think he's cleaner than Nazim. Let's put it at that. The thing with Nazim though is Nazim's a gamer, man. Nazim, like, he doesn't take no for an answer. It's just, I'm gonna be really pissed off when this fight's within reach and, like, there's a minute left and the commentators are talking about, like, this is anyone's fight, like, and then Nazim starts to showboat. Nazim starts to put his hands down, eat unnecessary shots, lose the fight that way, which was clearly within reach. You're a plus 170 dog. Everyone feels like they're making a good bet, but he just does some dumbass shit, So, but man, like, Nazim's got some stuff. Like that choke he hit on Terrence McKinney, people will just discredit it by talking about fence grabs. Fence grab, schmentz grab, man. The way he had his hand tied behind his back when he took his back and choked him out, like that was a serious rear naked choke. Who's been, whose last 2 losses are by rear naked choke, 10 years apart, 10 years apart, but it still happened, right? So I'm not completely counting out Nazim, but I do agree with you that I think that Ismael is just cleaner, more accurate, more active, more precise, and doesn't fuck around as much. So as a result, I'm going to pick him there, but Nazim's had like over a year off. And like, if he can just like drop the bravado and the arrogance, who knows? He's, like I said, he's a gamer, man, but
he's a great athlete.
Yeah. I don't think, like, I bet in the gym, he's like one of the best guys there easily. I bet in the gym he tools guys, but yeah, hopefully he can make it translate here. But until he does, I'm a pick Bonfim in this spot. So may the best man win.
All right.
Next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Rodolfo Vieira. He's 10-2, taking on Andre Petroski, who's 12-3. Currently, they got it. Rodolfo Vieira minus 240. The comeback on Petroski's plus 205. I mean, listen, you got 2 black belts. One just happens to be the black belt hunter. And you got Petroski. He's got the wrestling background. Normally in these instances, the grappling cancels itself out and they tend to stand and bang. But if there's any exception to the rule, the black belt hunter does like to go out there and prove points and beat guys at their own game. So how do you kind of see this one going down?
I wanted in my head to, like, me, I'm inclined to betting underdogs. So in my head, I really wanted to like Petroski, even though I've bet Vieira a ton. But man, like, looking at it, I can't get there for a number of reasons. For one, because I mean, maybe when Vieira slows down, Petroski could get takedowns and like just death and both be tired and lay on top of him. I don't really think so. But like fresh, Petroski's not gonna be able to grapple him. If he does, I would basically guarantee he gets swept and something terrible happens to him. Like if that's the route he chooses. On the feet, Petroski just wings overhands. Now, he could clip Rodolfo with one for sure. We've seen Cody Brundage knock Rodolfo down. But I got to say this, for, a lot of jiu-jitsu guys who come to the UFC get the reputation of fighting very, very soft. I do not think Rodolfo Vieira is soft at all. And it's funny because there were all those stories a couple years back about how this guy was like afraid to fight. And he was afraid to get hit. But man, you watch him fight Chris Curtis and he's banging. He can't get him down. And he's just like, okay, I'm just going to bite the mouthpiece and bang down with him. No fear of that. He's actually, the Brundage fight got hurt bad and showed a ton of heart there. I actually think Rodolfo is like really, really tough. And Andre Petroski, as far as UFC fighters go, I do not think is very, very tough. I still don't have any idea how he was knocked out by Jacob Malkoun. To this day, I'm not sure what landed or what happened there, but it was very, very odd to me. Just in the aggregate with this fight, I think Rodolfo is the better boxer here. He's obviously the better submission grappler. I think Petroski's got a bit more power and can knock him out, but I just feel like, I don't want to say Petroski's drawing dead to a knockout, but I feel like once his confidence starts to go, his whole game falls apart. And unless he clips Rodolfo early, I kind of think that's going to happen. So yeah, I think Rodolfo is a bit better at everything but, pure wrestling. They both have bad cardio. It could turn into a slop show late, but I think Vieira should probably take care of business. The line's fine, in my opinion.
Yeah. The thing about it is this. Okay. So when you get 2 grapplers, oftentimes a stand and bang. And the thing about it is Petroski's numbers are so low. They're so low, my friend. I know John Stargaryan knows exactly what I'm talking about, man. I mean, he doesn't let his hands go. I mean, he's still having a knockdown here and there. I'm not saying he hits soft by any means, but he's not comfortable in that realm, right? And where he is comfortable in grinding people out, good luck diving into a shot on Rodolfo Vieira, And then the thing about it is, what's going to happen when Rodolfo tries to shoot on Andre? because Rodolfo's got a seriously explosive blast double, especially for a guy with no wrestling background. I think he might have something for him on the ground and on the feet. That's the interesting part because they're not known for being strikers. I think Rodolfo's got cleaner hands and more output than Andre Petroski. So I don't think Andre Petroski's looked good in a long time. And let me explain what I mean. Let me actually pull up the fights. So the last time Petroski looked good in the UFC was Jesus Christ. In 2022, I actually was impressed with his Wellington Termon fight. I know it started kind of slow, but like to dominate a black belt like that, I know it's not a Rodolfo level black belt, but still to dominate a black belt like that at his own game, I appreciated that. So yeah, I'd say 3 years ago, they had the Nick Maximov choke, great job there, kid. But since then, a lot of people thought he lost the Meerschaert fight, got ran through by Demolidor Pereira. The Jacob Malkoun fight. Now he was losing up until then, but the finish was kind of weird. The Josh Frem fight was literally one of the worst fights I've ever seen in all my years watching the sport. And I don't even know if I want to call it a fight. You want to know why, right? Like
the next one's worse. The next fight's worse.
Oh, we're getting there. But actually, you say the next one's worse, but Petroski doubled up the amount of strikes he landed the next one that he did against Frem. Is
that true?
Yeah, you want to know something else that's true? I'm pretty sure that Petroski and Frem landed less combined strikes than Lewis and Ngannou.
Oh my God. That is so bad. Yeah, the last two have been absolutely excruciating to watch.
Yeah, and then that might have also even been the case. I think Petroski and Budka maybe landed like 2 more strikes than Lewis and Ngannou, but I'm just saying, Petroski, okay, are you ready for this? Okay, so since the Meerschaert fight, right, which was the last fight of his win streak, 0 strikes landed against Demolidor, 13 strikes landed against Malkoun, 12 strikes landed against Frem, 23 strikes landed against Budka. That is terrible. That is awful. And then the whole thing is, well, yeah, but he was landing takedowns in those fights. Okay, go take down Rodolfo Vieira. Let me know how that goes for you, kid, okay? So, yeah, I'm going Rodolfo Vieira. I'm not sure how it's going to go because, like I said, if Rodolfo wants to test his stand-up here, I think he'll be fine. If Rodolfo wants to, go black belt hunting, I think he'll be fine there too. So, whatever you decide, Rodolfo, I'm behind it, and I think he wins this fight.
I'm with you.
Now, next up, in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Jose Delgado making his UFC debut. He's 8-1, taking on Boston's own Connor Matthews, who's 7-2. Currently, they got it Delgado -310, Matthews +260. 2 Contender Series vets. Delgado ultra aggressive, kind of reminds me of like a featherweight like Carlos Condit. You know what I mean? Just goes like Carlos Condit when he was young. You know what I'm saying? Just goes out there, balls to the wall, lets it all hang out, and you love to see fighters like that. Now Matthews, I gotta admit, I haven't had the best reads on him, so I need your help here because like I was like really down on this guy, and I bet on that Farias guy on Contender Series. I was like, oh yeah, this dude's about to walk through Matthews, and like Matthews impressed me. And then the next fight against Bazooka, I was like, oh wait, so that's why I faded Matthews, so. Yeah, but maybe this time got that debut under his belt, and now he's coming out here maybe a little bit more prepared, a little bit more, calmed down. Because Delgado, no one's exempt from taking a setback here and there. And Delgado's less than 10 pro fights. Actually, both of these guys have had 9 fights on the dot. These are both of their 10 pro fights. So, yeah, I think who's got the higher ceiling potential? Delgado, but that doesn't mean he's impervious to a setback, but I do think Delgado gets it done. Tell me your opinion.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Delgado as a prospect. I mean, he's huge for the division, very fast, hits hard, throws in combination, seems to be a pretty competent grappler as well. Fights out of the lab, has a lot of good things behind him. Having said that, I worry a bit about how willing he is to eat 1 to give 3. Like, it's a dangerous game to play, especially in the UFC. Like, to come in there, chin up and just be comfortable eating hammers. But he's way better than Connor Matthews. I mean, Connor Matthews is really, it's funny because I remember his first UFC fight, taping it, or his first contenders fight with Francis Marshall. And while I was taping it, I was like, how is this Connor Matthews guy getting a contenders fight? Like, what is going, like Jay Ellis is like his best win going into it.
That's why I bet Farias. I was like, shit.
Yeah. So, and then the Fares fight, like Fares kind of just wilted, you know? Like I bet Bazooka in his last fight because I still feel like Connor Matthews, I look at him and I think his best attribute is he's very tough. Like the guy is game. He's not afraid. He'll bite down and go to war with you. But at this level, that's just not really enough when you get into guys with real technique. And it shouldn't be enough here. I think Delgado is a better fighter at everything and as the better athlete and more talented. But I do think, it's his debut. You don't know if he's going to get jitters in there. And he hasn't, other than Chris McCate, who just kind of grappled him for 15 minutes to a win, he hasn't fought anybody who's really fought back yet, like that much. And he's going to get that here. It's like, what happens when, he gets cracked a couple times and the fight doesn't just snowball his way. Now, maybe it will snowball his way here. I think it's very possible, maybe even likely. But at minus 310, that's a pretty big price to want to find that out, if this guy is, game for the UFC or doesn't have octagon jitters. But in the aggregate, I mean, I think Delgado's a much better fighter. I think he's probably going to knock Connor Matthews out here. But I don't know. Debut juice scares me.
Yeah, I mean, you're not obligated to play minus 310. You can sit back and, wait till you get value on him at some point. And the thing with Matthews that I don't like is there's some optics when he's on the back foot. Yeah. That kind of like Jake Matthews a bit. I know Jake Matthews is like so experienced now, but the thing we don't like about Matthews is how he kind of looks a little hesitant at times backing up, right? Like same thing with look, both their last names are Matthews. Maybe it's a thing. If your last name is Matthews, are there any other guys named Matthews? Do they do the same thing? Do they retreat like that hesitantly?
It's an Irish thing.
Fans, let us know. Let us know in the comments if that trends continue with any other guys. But anyways, listen, I think Delgado is going to be ultra aggressive, and there's going to come a time to fade him. But I don't think that this is the time. Maybe he gets caught, maybe not. But I know for a fact he's going to go right after Matthews, and I think he's got a great chance here, as the odds indicate. So yeah, I'm going to take him as well. Hey guys, I want to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, Bet105. They're an emerging crypto sports book that doesn't limit winners, plays the game the right way, and has fast and easy payouts. Now, one thing I really like about them that separates them is, check this out. Y'all know how split decisions and the judging is truly ruining the sport. Well, Bet105 are offering a deal that I've never seen any sports book do, and that's called split decision insurance. So if your fighter wins by split decision, all good. You win, you get your money, no big deal. But if your fighter loses by split decision, you get 25% back of your loss. Like, that's pretty damn unheard of, and actually should give you a little bit more comfortable entering those precarious spots with the state of judging in current MMA. Now, another cool thing that Bet105 are doing is their parlay boost. So for every 3-leg parlay, you're going to get a 15% odds boost. I mean, who doesn't want to get 15% better odds if you're a parlay player? So I think those two offers are pretty incredible, especially the split decision insurance. I've never heard of that before. I've heard of boost before, but hey, screw it. Go get yourself a 15% boost on those parlays. But the split decision insurance is something that separates Bet105 from everyone else. So the way y'all hit them up is you click the link in the description. That way, when you sign up, you support Half the Battle too. So thank you, Bet105, for supporting Half the Battle. Thank you to the fans. And also, big thing, give me feedback, because I give these guys direct feedback from what y'all say, and they tailor and adjust the game accordingly. This is supposed to be a user-friendly experience, and this is where the pros play. So make sure y'all check out Bet105. Click the link in the description. And thank you very much, Bet105, for supporting today's episode of Half the Battle. Now, next up in the strawweight division, we got a matchup between the longtime vet, Angela Hill. She's minus 110, taking on Ketlen Souza, who's also minus 110. Now, their records, Angela 17-14. Ketlen 15-4. Now, normal 17-14s, but this is different because this girl's entire career has been in the UFC, right? Yeah. Or she had a little stint in Invicta, but I'm saying like came into the UFC at like 0-0 in the first tough run or something like that, or 1-0. Like, yeah. So all respect to Angela Hill, man. She's been doing her thing. So here's what's tough for me, John, because I'm good at calling Angela Hill fights when she's fighting someone good. Like, Yan Xiaonan was like minus 150. I'm like, okay, so like when it's situations like that, yeah, I'm great. But like when it's like these prospects that are kind of unproven and young, that's when I suck at calling Angela Hill fights. So tell me your opinion on this.
A year or two ago, I'd probably smash Angela Hill in this spot. I guess
someone's gonna clip that.
But it's funny because I think Angela Hill, she is, you talk about vet lessons all the time, right? And she is like your classic veteran in that, I think her athleticism has actually been declining for a fair amount of time, but she stopped distance striking with people now. She goes to what works for her. She goes to the clinch a lot. She goes to her grappling more than she ever has in the past. It used to be a weakness. Now it's a strength. And so I think it's allowed her to extend her career past where she might have ordinarily been able to. In this fight, I think she's the more skilled of the two women by a reasonably large amount. But I look at some of her recent fights, and I really think you're starting to kind of see the decline. She fought Tabitha Ricci last fight, and I bet Ricci there. But it's funny because I thought she was going to be able to press Angie to the fence, get a bunch of takedowns from there. She didn't actually have that much success cage pushing her or wrestling her. But she did compete with her striking on the feet and even kind of, wobble her a few times, which was alarming to me because Tabitha Ricci outstriking Angela Hill over 15 minutes was not something I thought was even a remotely likely outcome. And to me, it's a sign that she's kind of on the decline a bit. We saw her get hurt by Lupe Godinez a couple of years, like 2 years back. She had a pretty rough time with Denise Gomes until she gassed out in that fight as well. And now she's taking on Ketlen Souza. And I think Souza's probably worse than that group of women, but something Souza does have is a lot of horsepower. She's a very, very strong woman. She hits very, very hard, has legitimate knockout power for the division, and she's very, very fast. And even though I think Hill is better, I think she's going to get landed on a lot here. I think Souza's got most of the, big moment upside where she could hurt her and kind of, steal moments in this fight. And also at the end of the day, it seems to be a theme this card, but Angela Hill's 40 years old. This is a woman who is clearly much closer to the end of her career than the beginning and very likely regressing. Whereas you have someone in Souza who I think is 29, just entering her prime. That's not a dynamic I really want to fade. I hope Angela wins, but honestly, like my gut instinct is Souza's going to win this fight.
I got to flip a coin because like, bro, I am terrible at picking Angela Hill fights when she's fighting unproven prospects, right? I always want to take the prospect because I have this thing about fading Hill, but Hill is really good. Like when you're unproven, bro, she'll give you that vet lesson. But like when you're ready for the top 15, those girls always get past her. Anyways, Angela Hill's got the bigger head. Souza's got the bigger tail. So you know what's what. Oh, tails. We're going with Ketlen Souza here. I wasn't expecting that. I thought I was going to come in here picking Angela Hill, but looks like we got Ketlen Souza here. So may the best woman win. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got a matchup between Jared Gordon. He's 20-7, welcoming the newcomer Mash Rabjan.
I think so.
I'm sure it's pronounced. I'm sure
Black Junior is his nickname.
The J is probably silent or something. So like, yeah, y'all let me know how to pronounce this dude's first name, but let's just go with Mash Ruziboev. So Mash Ruziboev, 24-1, brother of Nursultan Ruziboev, right? So that's pretty cool that they gave him that, short notice call. And currently, Jared Gordon minus 280, Ruziboev plus 240. So obviously, Jared Gordon, the well-known commodity. And man, one can make an argument that Jared Gordon's on the biggest win streak of his life because a lot of people thought that he arguably beat not only Paddy Pimblett, but also Nasrat Haqparast. And even if you don't think he won those fights, he was head-to-head with both those guys. Like it was like, in a loss, he didn't lose stock. To me, it was like, okay, you proved you're right there. You're a top 25 guy. I know you're proven and you're legit. And it reminds me of like, there's certain guys you've seen, their whole careers in the UFC, like Jared Gordon, like Jake Matthews last week, where or since you've seen the downs from earlier in their career, people have like that implanted in their head, like, oh, this guy is a fraud or this, where it's like, no, these guys are developing. You've literally seen them in the UFC since they were kids. They've had to learn the ropes along the way. Now they're putting together those performances. So when you see Jake Matthews, who's been in the UFC since he was 19, now he's 30, taking on this kid Prado, who's 1-3 in the UFC, it's one of those situations where you have to show respect to the vet. And similarly here, Jared Gordon's been paying dues for how long now? And the skills are there, man. I feel like his hands are getting better. I feel like his head movement's getting better. And on top, I've heard that this guy has always been super heavy. Now, the thing with Ruziboev, just like his bro, you know what you got to look out for. These guys are opportunistic finishers. Let's pull up what the exact finish numbers are on Mr. Ruziboev here. So Ruziboev has, guys, this guy has literally 17 finishes. 17 of his 20 wins are finishes, 12 by knockout, 5 by sub. But the caveat is, just like Big Bro, the records have been on the padded side. So there's that, but there's still a danger factor, and Jared's been stopped before. So yeah, obviously Ruziboev's live to finish, but if Ruziboev does not finish, I think Jared puts the pace on him. I think Jared grinds him out. I think Jared rudely welcomes him to the UFC and shows him that, hey, you'll be back one day, kid, but I'm the guy that's been here, 10 years by now? Like, I'm the one that's been paying his dues, and yeah, it's Jared Gordon's time. And like the MMA gods, obviously, you can't. I already learned you can't put stock into fate and destiny, because if anyone had fate and destiny to win a belt, it's cancer survivor Tatiana Suarez, and that was not the case. So, but man, with the shit that the dues that Jared Gordon's paid, losing those fights that people thought he won, and just elevating his game, from a guy who we thought was a couple fights away from being cut, and now he's on the best run of his career, you have to show respect. So you have to also, on that respect of Gordon, you have to show respect to the finishing ability of Ruziboev. But besides that, if Ruziboev does not get a finish here, I think Jared grinds him out. So give me Jared Gordon here, vet lesson.
Yeah, Jared's a bit cursed. I have bet Jared a ton throughout his career. I bet him huge against Pimblett, like plus 240. I bet him last fight against Nasrat. Obviously nauseating, both of those fights. Regardless of whether you think they were both close fights, but it's like sitting on plus 200 plus tickets on that, and then it just losing in that fashion. Not the most fun ever. But I think Jared's a good fighter. He's been underrated for most of his career because he is a bit on the chinny side, but he's a decent boxer. And it's funny you mentioned that winning streak. You didn't mention the other one in there. He was doing damn good against Bobby Green as well before he ate the flying headbutt that knocked him out. Jared's a tough fighter, but he's 37 years old. I think he's better everywhere here.
Damn, is he really 37 already?
Dude, yeah, man. He has been around the block. His body has been through the ringer, not just in the octagon, It is, the guy's got a great story, but he has been around. So, look, Ruziboev's on short notice. I agree with everything you said about him. He's like a classic. He's just like his brother, very fast, dynamic, but not a great striker if you can deduct the critical stuff. And if you get him on his back, not a lot there. And Jared, on the other hand, very technical. His boxing's gotten better. If he gets on top of you, he's going to hold you down or finish you. Something that concerns me, though, is one, the age is a big concern for me. Two, I mean, we always knew Jared's chin wasn't really that great. So, and it's been a while since it's been checked hard. Three, his wrestling is his biggest asset in this fight. If they strike for 15 minutes, yeah, I would think Jared would win a decision. But, I think there's a very high probability of him getting knocked out if he stands with him for 15. And I was looking at this the other day. Jared has only landed one or more takedowns once in his last 6 fights, which is pretty concerning. His wrestling efficacy seems to have gotten worse since he moved up to 55. 45 is a lot bigger, a lot stronger than guys. He's had more issues getting guys down. So,
to his credit, though, he's been banging a lot more.
He has, but that concerns me here, that is, that's the, I want to see him win. I think he has every tool he needs to cover this price here, but I can't shake this I have a feeling, and I'm not going to bet, Ruziboev on a feeling. Don't get me wrong. I think Jared Gordon's the better fighter here, but I have this feeling that he's going to get caught here. Just like his brother, I feel like the market, even myself included, sometimes underestimates these guys who their game looks like shit, but people underestimate how dynamic they are. It only takes one shot, especially against an older, chinnier fighter, So I think Gordon should cover this price. Like I think the price skill for skill is accurate, but I have this odd feeling he's going to get clipped here. And Ruziboev is the kind of guy that would profile as someone who could cause him issues with power.
I mean, 12 knockout wins. So,
It's either that or he's just going to get, mauled. So
right. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Rafael Estevam. He's 12-0, taking on Jesus Aguilar, who's 11-2. Currently, they got it. Estevam minus 400. The comeback on Aguilar is plus 300. So Estevam, my thing with him is I would just like to see him fight more because he's got a lot of attributes at flyweight that could potentially carry him far, or they could make him move up to bantamweight if he can't make 25s, because this guy's fucking huge for 25s. I mean, he's like 5'8" with a near 70-inch reach.
Jacked.
Dude, he's huge. And he's a Novo and Yao guy. I'm pretty sure, they're responsible for the great Jose Aldo and tons of other great fighters. And I mean, like the way he handled Energy, like those first 2 rounds, I was like, damn, like that was like easy work. And the thing about this Jesus Aguilar guy, I got a lot of respect for him because, like, he's a midget with big balls. That's the bottom line. Like they listed him at like 5'4", dog. This guy's like 5'1", 5'2". But man, he fights like the fucking man. He fights like, like I like this guy a lot. And also he's got a nasty guillotine, and I have a big affinity for front choke. So I'm a huge fan of this guy, but like 36% takedown defense against this guy who can barely make 125. Who's just, I just think Estevam probably bodies him a bit. I don't think the guillotine is going to be a threat here. Like if you've been dealing with Jose Aldo and Leo Santos and Eduardo Dantas and Henan Barao in his prime and all these guys, those are the guys you came up grappling with. Like, I think you'll be fine for this kid's guillotine. Watch him get caught now, but I'm just saying, I think he'll be okay. And then besides that, what other threat is there from Aguilar? I'm not worried about his hands, unless you're Shannon Ross. So, give me Estevam, but not interested at the price. But I think that he grinds this guy out. Would you be surprised if he choked him out, or do you think it's mostly a grind?
I actually think he's going to submit him. I think it's pretty decent likelihood, honestly.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm with you 100%. I think Estevam's just simply the better fighter. You nailed it. Aguilar's got a ton of heart. He's got a good guillotine. If you can't wrestle, he can wrestle you. But anybody that can wrestle him. And Estevam is, you mentioned Nova being responsible for Jose Aldo. Was it Nova or their doctor is the better question, But he's on the same stuff, and he's a very good wrestler. It's funny. I bet Charles Johnson against him because I was like, dude, this guy's, he'll get takedowns, but he's not holding Charles down. But he was holding Charles down, and like no one holds Charles down. I was actually extremely impressed by the performance. And the thing is, when I was looking at this, I'm like, maybe Jesus can come on late round 2, early round 3. But I'm watching it, and I'm like, this guy's gonna bank 2 rounds. I'm almost positive. And to your point, Jesus doesn't have much power. He's very short. I don't think Estevam's going to have, if he does get tired, we'll have barely any issue at all avoiding him, Jesus is just, he's a meat and potatoes fighter who tries really hard, but who isn't really at this level. Whereas Estevam, if he gets his cardio together, could potentially be like a top 10 to 15 guy, in my opinion. So, I'm with you. I think he's just going to run through him.
If he gets his cardio and weight in order.
Yeah, because
because like I don't want to wait till 2027 to see him fight again after this, right? Like I want him to make a quick turnaround if things go according to plan. So I feel you there, bro. Now, next up in the welterweight division, I'm so pumped about this one. We got a match between Gabriel Bonfim, 60-1, taking on Khaos Williams, who's 15-3. Currently, they got it. Gabriel minus 210. The comeback on Khaos is plus 180. Take this one first, please.
Dude, this is a banger. I don't understand how this is not like the co-main event. I get it. Calvin Kattar's a legend, whatnot, but this is what puts people in the seats right here.
I agree. Let me say, I'm so sorry to cut you off again.
No worries.
I think, and I could be way off. My theory is that because both Bonfim brothers are on the card, they want to have one very early, one very late, so that they're not like, super stressed. Yeah. They got enough time to, process what happened, etc. Keep going.
That would make a lot of sense. And I kind of lean Khaos here, but I'm not sure because it's funny. Gabriel Bonfim was one of these guys. his first couple fights in the UFC and his regional tape, I was thinking in my head, this guy's a huge fraud. All he's doing is snatching guillotines and getting guys out that way. Guillotines, they're not going to work once you hit a certain level in the UFC. I don't trust his cardio. I don't trust his defense. But you've seen him, and especially his last fight against Angelusa, and I was really, really impressed with what I saw. He slowed down a little bit, but, he was still putting out numbers late into that fight. He's got really, really crisp hands, really fast, hits hard. He's got nasty, like, Muay Thai knees. I've actually been pretty impressed with him. Even the Dalby fight, I look at that, and I think how many guys at 185 pounds are capable of doing what Nick Dalby did to him, or 170 pounds. Nick Dalby is... he's a blue-collar fighter, but the guy has a pace unlike anybody else really in the division, and he just did not let him breathe for that entire fight. So I actually think Gabriel Bonfim is a real talent, but obviously Khaos Williams is as well, and Khaos Williams is one of the most dangerous fighters, in the division. He's got, his weaknesses. He can be hittable. He can be counterable, but he's very fast. Those counter blitzes he comes at you with are very, very hard to stop, and if you get caught by one of those big, wide, insane swinging. I don't even know what you call them. They're just the widest hooks you've ever seen, and they somehow always find a way to find the mark. He can put anybody out. I guess when I'm looking at this fight, I've been considering betting Khaos because I do think, Gabriel can get clipped if you throw more than one shot out there. You saw Lusa when he'd let go combinations but find a home. And so I can see Khaos finding a home and putting him out. The one thing that kind of holds me back is we have not seen almost anybody grapple Khaos in the UFC. The one time it happened was Michel Pereira, and he immediately got to dominant positions both times. And I'm reasonably confident that Gabriel Bonfim is a better grappler than Michel Pereira is. And I just can't get this thought out of my head. It's like, I keep hearing people tell me, wow, Khaos has to be the side. I'm like, I kind of agree, but it's like, if he just comes out, gets single-legged, and has a body triangle on him 20 seconds into the fight, what are you going to be saying? Because I sort of think that that's very, very likely. I think the grappling edge for Gabriel is probably pretty big here. So if he's smart and he goes to it, I think he'll run through Khaos. But if they strike, man, I do not think you want to be striking with Khaos for too long. The guy is dangerous, and if you want to play the who's sharper on the counter and who's more dangerous game, I think I'd favor Khaos in that game. But yeah, my lean is Gabriel Bonfim. I just have a feeling he knows the game plan here and he's going to come out grappling, and I think it's going to be enough.
Yeah, I mean, I love Khaos Williams. If you're a fan of the sport and you don't like watching Khaos Williams fight, please stop watching the sport, because this guy is putting people out cold. He's going to these 3-round wars. He's consistently putting on the kind of fights that the fans want to see. And like you said, there's a physicality. What about that 77-inch reach? I think that's a big factor with Khaos too. Like, you think you're at a safe range, and all of a sudden that bungalow comes out of nowhere. As Carlston Harris, who is a long guy. Carlston Harris has those freaky long arms. He thought he was safe. Boom. And it's like
Randy
Khaos,
too.
You said what?
Randy too. He dropped Randy too.
Oh yeah. And I bet Randy there. I was like, fuck. I was like, Randy, get up, and man, it's like, you have to be very, very careful trading in the pocket with a guy like Khaos. I'll tell you that right now. But man, when I watched the tape on Gabriel Bonfim, I was blown away. I was like, holy shit. Like, this kid is a absolute stud. 25, 26 years old, doing the things that he's doing to these guys. Like, he's just running through these guys like nothing, like absolute nothing. Guys that have given real people real fights, like it's absolutely nothing. And then the Dalby fight, which, we could talk about, young stunt, vet lesson, blah, blah, blah. Bro, he was dominating Dalby for like the first 7 minutes or whatnot. And Dalby did Dalby things to him. Dalby did that to Renat too, bro. Like, Dalby, I don't know what changed. Like, look, Dalby's always been like a tough dude, but in the last like 2 years, something changed with Dalby. I don't know if he got a new doctor, because did you see that whole like back piece he got that extends to his ass and stuff? I don't know if that provides some kind of powers for him.
The mouth breathing? Have you noticed the mouth breathing? Yeah.
It's like, okay, bro. But honestly, like, Gabriel was looking good even in the second round. But what happened, and I love how he rebounded, because that Angelusa fight, man, let me say a couple things about that fight that I liked. Number one, the get-up game of Bonfim, if just in case Khaos wants to mix in a takedown or two, dude, Bonfim does not settle on bottom position. Bonfim scrambles back up to his feet. And what I love about that is because, he's a guillotine guy. So what's people's criticism of guillotine guys? If you don't get the guillotine, you're going to end up on your back. And then what? Then you're fucked the rest of the round. Well, that's not the case with this guy. This guy can freely go for guillotines because his get-up game is so damn good that, hey, I don't get the guillotine, right back up to my feet. And what I really liked about that last one, because the whole narrative going into it after the Dalby was, oh man, this guy, first rounder bust, any sign of adversity is going to quit. Fake news. In the Ange Lusa fight, he gets taken down 4 times in that first round, gets back up every single time, and goes on to land 100 significant strikes in the fight over 3 rounds. That is not a first round or bust guy. You don't land 100 significant in 3 rounds if you can't fight past 1. And he's establishing his jab. There's calf kicks, knees from the clinch. I like that a lot too. The only thing that I'm worried about is sometimes when he exits the pocket, like you'll throw a combination and then his head will just immediately go right back to the center. And that's where he can be lined up with a big counter shot by Khaos, who you don't want to get hit by. But that's the only path I see for Khaos. I do not see Khaos systematically breaking this man down. I think Khaos has to have a huge moment where he hurts him and either changes the tide of that round and the momentum of the fight, or goes ahead and finishes him. Whereas I think that Bonfim can pick Khaos apart on the feet, jabs, calf kicks, straight punches, mix in takedowns. Like you said, you saw Michel Pereira get some very dominant positions. I'm impressed with Gabriel's ground game, not just his guillotine. His top control is damn good too. How about that Contender Series submission he got? Look, he was in there and with a guy in Trey Waters who's 6'5" with like an 80-inch reach. And that dude Trey Waters attacked one of those power guillotines. And when you're like 6'5" attacking a power guillotine, but dudes ain't gonna get out of that. That's just the bottom line. And the fact that Bonfim not only found a way to get out of that, but used it against Waters and turned it into a Von Flue.
He's a very educated grappler.
And he's 26. Dude, I'm telling you, I think that this kid is a future top 15 guy. And actually, I know people that I respect are on Khaos here. I love Khaos. Khaos is the man. I would love to have Khaos on my show. Like, he fights how the fans want to see people fight. I'm a fan, but that doesn't matter. My analysis is that Gabriel Bonfim is going to actually show out here and that the odds are correct. I'm going Gabriel Bonfim here.
All right.
Next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Elijah Smith, he's 7-1, taking on the vet Vince Morales, who's 16-8. Currently, they got it Elijah Smith -160. The comeback on Vince Morales is +140. So Elijah making his UFC debut against the most seasoned vet he's ever fought in his entire career. But that seasoned vet is 3-6 or 3-7 in the UFC. But fought a significantly higher level of competition. Is Vince finally gonna put it together, man? Like, or is it just never gonna happen at the UFC level?
Dude, this is another one similar to the fight I mentioned earlier with Edmen. I taped this late Sunday and it was like +200, and I was like, man, I might bet Vince Morales. Woke up the next morning and it had gone down to like 155. I was like, I'm good. I did not want to bet Vince Morales, and now I don't have to bet Vince Morales. And honestly, the issue is, to your point, I don't think so. I think Vince kind of is what he is, and it's like his game's either going to work against you or it's not. You know, you look at how he fought, his approach to fighting both top-level competition and bottom-level competition is almost identical. Like, you go watch his fight with Draco Rodrigues. Draco Rodrigues, not a very good fighter. Vince should run through him. He wins the fight, but it's a very, very low-volume, competitive, point-fighty match. You know, Miles Johns, much better than Draco Rodrigues, fights him the exact same way. Vince just kind of, I don't want to say exists, but that's kind of what he does. He comes out there. He's a pretty good technical boxer. He's an okay defensive wrestler. He's an okay wrestler. He's an okay submission grappler. He's pretty slow. He's got good cardio, but he's meat and potatoes. Like, you know what you're going to get. You know, if Vince can outbox you, he's going to win the fight. If he can outgrapple you, he's going to win the fight. But he's not going to change anything up, and he can't stop leg kicks at all. And now you got a guy in Elijah Smith. I have my fair share of questions about Elijah Smith because We have seen him. If you've taped him, he has gassed out bad the couple times he's entered round 3, and it's been real ugly. But what I will say about Elijah Smith is he is a very good athlete. He is very fast. He's got a good 1-2, and he's a very, very good wrestler. Now, I don't think he's going to be able to have too much success holding Vince down, but I do think he can take him down. And like, I just watch it, and in my head, I'm like, if Vince pushed the pace on this guy, he will probably break him and maybe even finish him late in the fight. But then I kept thinking, I'm like, when has Vince pushed the pace on anybody in his entire career? Like Miles Johns, had he pushed the pace on Miles Johns, he might have broken him, but didn't. That's not what he does, And when they're fresh, Smith's longer, he's faster. I think he's, just sharper. Like his strikes are more to the target. If he decides to mix in leg kicks, they're going to be free, as we know they always are with Vince. I just think in my head, I'm like, yeah, Vince could win this fight. Maybe he can knock him out. Maybe he'll gas out and he wins. But I just feel like the athleticism gap, like Elijah Smith's getting better. This is a guy who's getting better, who is a great athlete. And Vince Morales is just Vince Morales. And to me, I don't trust Vince Morales to do enough to get the win here on a consistent basis. I think the line's fine. I think maybe you could even say Smith should be a little wider, honestly.
Yeah, look, I get why people want to fade Smith. Unproven guy versus, I want to say proven, but proven to lose, proven to not show up at this level, right? Look, I respect the fact that Vince, when he got released from the UFC, he goes back to his regional scene. He did a couple things I liked. He put on a lot of size. Yeah. He really tightened up some things in his grappling. I see him out here like picking up dudes and slamming them, getting Darce chokes. I'm like, okay, Vince, I love it. Now let's see that translate to the UFC level. And I know Taylor Lapaloo and fucking Song Yadong, all these guys he's been fighting are just a completely different level. He even had Song. Some may think he had Song on the ropes in round 3 too. But I'm just saying, my biggest issue with Morales, like you said, doesn't know how to block a leg kick, doesn't do enough. So it's, and then here's the thing with Elijah. Freak athlete, young, stud, hungry, talented, all that stuff, skilled everywhere. I think it's going to be one of these situations where Vince Morales bettors. They bet him here, and the first 2 rounds, Elijah, is just too athletic, too fast, too this, too that. And then round 3, Elijah's on death's doorstep, and Vince almost gets a finish, but loses a 29-28, one of those type situations.
Moral victory.
Yeah, because look, when Vince was like plus 200 or whatever it was, plus 170, I don't remember. I was like, yeah, this guy's so much more experienced. What has Smith proven? But he just doesn't put that umph on it. He doesn't put that finishing touch on anything. He doesn't separate it. Like even in these local fights, these regional fights where he's fighting against like actual jobbers that are like fat, that are not full-time fighters. Like, yes, he's winning, but there's moments where these guys are backing him up. There's moments where he's not cutting off the cage how I want him to. He's not assertive enough. And
that's the word right there, is assertive. He is never assertive in his entire career.
Yeah, exactly. So for that reason, I'm going to also go Elijah. But like I said, I think Elijah wins the first 2, hangs on for dear life in round 3. Everyone says, Vince was
Morales' value.
had there been 2 more rounds, well, there's not 2 more rounds. In advance this is a 3-round fight. I'm gonna go Elijah Smith for the dub. Now, next up in the heavyweight division, we got a match between Walter Walker. That's what I call him, Walter Walker. It's not Walker, it's Walker. Come on now. Because if you're not going to call him Walter and you're going to call him Walter, then it has to be Walter.
Actually,
Walker.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Why isn't it Walter Walker? It sounds way better.
So Walter Walker, he's 12-1, taking on Dontel Mays, who's 11-7, the face humper. Currently, they got it. Walker minus 230, the comeback on Mays plus 195. Y'all know Walter Walker is the brother of Johnny Walker, and he fights like nothing like him. Johnny Walker, flashy, big flying knees, etc., etc. Spins. This motherfucker is just a straight up grinder. This guy wants to hump your legs and do all kinds of things. Now, real quick, before we talk about the matchup, what, in your opinion, happened in that Junior Taffa fight? Was it just a verbal sub to the heel hook? Like what ankle lock? Like what exactly? What happened?
I guess he yelled, or he must have said, "I quit." I mean, it seems pretty obvious that it was a tap because, Taffa freaked out, and then 2 seconds later, it seemed like he knew that,
So why was Tafa trying to fight him afterwards? Because apparently, like, was there a disrespect I didn't know about that happened prior?
Bro, did you see last weekend? Justin Tafa was contesting the stoppage against Teixeira.
Yeah.
Dude got iced cold and was covering up and contesting it. Like, it just seems like these guys just like don't really want to be able to accept defeat or can't accept defeat.
I feel you on that. Granted, Justin he was actually unconscious, so maybe
that is true.
He didn't know what happened. Whereas Junior, like, he was in a leg lock. He was like, so, but I just came out like on some article that apparently they had to move Walter Walker to a different hotel because there were like 40 of Tafa's people waiting for him at his hotel to fight him. So I'm curious, did Walter say some shit that has nothing to do with the fight and that's why there's the beef, or was it simply that Tafa couldn't accept losing in that fashion? So I'm curious exactly what happened there. Now, as far as this matchup is concerned, I like that Walter knows where his strengths lie. I like the fact that he's a grinder and he knows that he's not going to come out here try to bang with anybody. And Mays is, listen, Snoop Dogg said it on the Contender Series from day one. This guy's not Don'Tale Mayes is not invited to the gang fight. One does not simply lose to Alan Crowder. He arguably lost to Rocky Martinez, bro. And I know there's been a win here and there, but it's like this guy is the ultimate, like, what's the word? Just like a person that lets you down. The ultimate underwhelmer. He's the ultimate underwhelmer. Like, bro, you're a 6'6", 260-pound freak. Like, let me show it to me. Show it to me. It's just not there. And so it's like, I'm not impressed with Walter yet. He hasn't shown, like, if you lose to Lucas Brzeski at the UFC level, I'm sorry. I'm not, I know people are giving him credit. People are saying, oh, Brzeski's not as bad as people think. Brzeski, he got robbed against Boudet. Fuck that. Brzeski sucks, man. And the fact that Walker lost to him, that's a red flag. But then again, Don'Tale Mayes going 50-50 with Rocky and not being invited to the gang fight by Snoop Dogg, losing to Alan Crowder. I think Walter Walker probably grinds him out, but I'm not interested because I don't trust either guy.
That's fair. I took Walker last week at like a much different number. Like, I think this price is fine. To your point, you were saying, what's the word for Don'Tale Mayes? It's like, looks like Tarzan, fights like Jade, in my opinion. Like that's the, like, I was a big, or I shouldn't say a big Mays fan. That's the wrong way to put it. But I was a fan of him for a while because I'm like, he's huge. He's 6'6". He's got like an 83-inch reach. He's a decent athlete for a 265-pound man. I'm like, he's going to put it together at some point, but he's just never put anything together, really. Like, you watch him and it's like, yeah, he knocked out Arlovsky, but Arlovsky's 44 years old. Who cares? I bet him against Kyle Machado as a dog, and he won that fight, and somehow I felt bad about the bet afterward. I was just like, same old Don'Tale. Like, the guy, he just comes out there, and it's these weird lunging side kicks taking him out of position. Like, the guy can't stay in his stance. He can't defend takedowns. He can't get off his back. If he is not fighting well, he gets discouraged, like, just lacks confidence. I look at him, and I'm like, what can he do here to overtly affect Walter Walker? Like, I'm with you. I think Walter Walker losing to Brzeski is a horrible, horrible look. And I think he's going to fight somebody in the very near future who's going to actually has power, unlike Brzeski, and is going to put it on him and put him out. But that's my issue with Don'Tale, is that Don'Tale, he doesn't have much power for heavyweight. Very little, actually. He's not a high volume striker. He has poor footwork. He has poor takedown defense. He cannot get off his back, and he has bad cardio. And he's taking on a guy who wants to come out there, take him down, get on top of him, and just land ground and pound. And so it's like, could he knock him out? Sure, but Mays is near the bottom tier of the division in terms of power. And like I said, he doesn't throw volume and he can't defend takedowns. So, I mean, it sounds like just a very like basic take, but it's true. Like, I look at the fight and I'm like, unless Don'Tale Mayes, for the first time in whatever it's been, 10 UFC fights, finally started taking his training seriously and like learned how to defend wrestling, I just don't see how he's keeping this fight on the feet. And if he's not keeping it on the feet, I think he's probably getting overwhelmed and maybe even like subbed or KO'd on the back end of the fight.
I wonder what kind of damage John Jones is doing to these guys in the practice.
They are, all of that entire gym now is just basically bodies for John Jones. That's it. That is it.
Hey, I bet they make more money that way than fighting on their own. So, yeah.
Maurice Green and Don'Tale Mayes sparring in Jackson.
Facts. smoking cigarettes. Now, last but not least, in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Julia Avila, she's 9-3, taking on Jacqueline Cavalcanti, who's 8-1. Now, I know you got an opinion on this, but let me go first so you can refute all my claims, okay? So, Julia Avila first comes into the UFC. I liked Julia Avila back then. Like, man, she was ultra aggressive. She had this mean streak about her. I was like, okay, this girl, like, she's consistent. She could go on to be a top 15 girl. Maybe she even did, and I don't remember. But, like, I was pretty impressed with her at one point. But I think she had a major injury plus a pregnancy. Comes back against Miesha Tate, and, like, dude, it's one thing. You know, it's not the fact that she lost to a fighter that retired in 2016. It's not the fact that she lost to a fighter that's like almost 40. It's more so like she didn't look like an athlete. She didn't look like Julia Avila. She looked like a decrepit old woman with gray hair and 2 knee braces. And I was like, wait, are you sure this is Julia Avila? Is this Julia Avila's cousin? Like what? Because I have no explanation for that. And of course, you don't want to put too much stock into just one bad result, but is that not indicative of what could happen the next time? And then with Cavalcanti, she's physical. She's put up over 100 significant strikes. She has 90% takedown defense. She's still young in her UFC career. Feel like she's where Avila was like 5 years ago, but better. So I actually do think the price is warranted, and I do think she runs through her. Now, whether runs through her means a first round finish or a 30-26, I don't know. But unless Avila, I don't think there's any unless. I think Avila is completely done. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Yeah, I think the Avila we used to know and love is a fighter of the past. And what we're dealing with now is a grandma. So, give me a Cavalcanti to make a statement at these odds.
All right. Well, I do not love many underdogs on this card, but I couldn't come on half the battle the first time and not have at least one hot take on an underdog here. And it's going to be a juicy one because it's Julia Avila. I am going to bet Julia Avila here. And I agree with like all your takes about the last fight. I can't disagree with any of that. I actually think Jacqueline Cavalcanti is quite a talented prospect. You know, she's big for the division, great volume, great frame, seems to have decent footwork. And Avila looked awful in her last fight, but we know Avila was coming off having a baby shortly before that fight. She claims that she tore her ACL off the first takedown in that fight. Are we sure it wasn't torn coming in though? You know,
no, she had two knee braces in that fight.
That's what I'm saying. You know, like it was probably, but see, like that's kind of my point. It's possible she just showed up with a torn ACL and like no real training camp there. Now, it's also entirely possible that you are right, and she's just a washed old lady who's going to come out here and get finished by Jacqueline here. I think that is like a reasonably live outcome here, or she needs a reasonably live, maybe even the most likely outcome. But what I can say is Julia Avila, you mentioned at her peak, ferocious, you know, hit very hard for a woman, very fast, very quick. And I can't help but think, I just watched Jacqueline Cavalcanti come out here, and the women she just fought in the UFC are Zara Farron, who is 41, never won a fight in the UFC, cut. She went to a split decision with Josiane Nunes, not a very good UFC fighter. I don't believe Josiane Nunes has, I think Bea Malecki is her only win against a fighter with a win in the UFC. And then she went to a split decision with Nora Cornell, also pretty terrible, like the absolute bottom of the barrel here. Now, I respect her game, and I think she's a good prospect, but she's not a big power striker. She's a point striker. She is not a grappler at all, and she has a style that we've already seen the judges really, really don't like. And she's fighting a woman in Avila who, whatever you want to say about her, the woman sits down on her shots, and she's got some absolute pop in it. You know, she hits a lot harder than Nora Cornell does. Probably not as hard as Josiane Nunes, but she is, you know, much more technical than Josiane Nunes is on the feet.
But does she still sit down on her punches? I know she sat down on her punches in 2020, but in 2025, does she still with no knees?
We're going to find, well, so that's my thing, right? Because it is very easy to look at the last fight and draw a lot from it. And it might be the right take. But the truth is, it's also possible coming off knee surgery that she's better. You know, I looked at her Instagram. She looks in much better shape than she did for her last camp here.
That's good.
And if she comes out at 85% of the fighter that she was in her prime, or 80%, she's probably going to give her a pretty competitive fight here. She hits hard. She's pretty technical. I mean, this is a woman who outstruck Pani Kianzad, you know, who was a pretty good striker. Now, if she shows up like she did last fight, obviously it's a dead bet. She's going to get butchered. But to me, like the way I guess I'm looking at it is I feel like minus 550, minus 600 is kind of like Cavalcanti's ceiling here. Whereas if it turns out it is recency bias and she is in much better shape, the price could be more like Cavalcanti minus 150, minus 185. So I feel like at the price, most of the upside is with Avila. So I do like the Avila side here. I'm going to play it small. I'm also, though, going to play the under with it as well, because that's a pretty big dog price. And I kind of feel like if you're right, and she is as decrepit as she looked last fight, there's a pretty good possibility she's just going to get abused and get finished. So I kind of like the idea of just like fading the Cavalcanti decision here, because I do think if she's that wash, she's just going to probably finish her. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking about it though. I think Julia, I don't want to say I think she wins the fight, but I think there's a bit of value on her at plus 400.
It's under 225.
Yeah, I'll tell you what it is right now.
There's no way that's under 1.5.
No, it is under 2.5 plus 275.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Like if she's decrepit and washed, she's probably getting finished. You know?
Yeah. So yeah, you get the best of both worlds, unless she wins
a decision.
Unless she wins a decision, yeah. So,
and there's a WMMA fight. So.
Yeah, well, listen, fuck it. I mean, I hope you catch that plus 275. That'd be nice. Then who gives a fuck about the 0.25 sprinkles? So I feel you on that, bro. Well, John, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me right here, right now. On Half the Battle, the fans can follow you at MMA Fox, and also make sure y'all check out the Club and Sub podcast, available on YouTube. Is it also available on podcast platforms or just YouTube?
No, I am going to get that going in the next month or so. We also are going to hire a production person the next month, so hopefully scaling things up a little bit.
Nice. Well, if you need any help with any of that, just let me know. To the fans, thank y'all so much for all your support. I am so grateful. Please smash the like button, hit the subscribe, leave me a comment. And when this is over, if you feel so inclined to share, I truly appreciate that. And anything else, hit me up on Twitter, Best Fight Picks, on Instagram, Half the Battle Pod, on TikTok, Half the Battle Podcast, and here, of course, at YouTube Official, and the Spotifys, the iTunes, the SoundClouds, everywhere. Y'all know, but I'm down to interact with anyone that has my back. Y'all know where to reach me. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.